tonight's topic is from 504 and IEP plans to college success. My name is Diane Barnett. I am the Learn Fully College Readiness Specialist. And this conversation is a big topic. We're talking about navigating the transition, understanding the shift in rights and responsibilities. It's a big one. Disability services available on campus, the best colleges for students with learning differences, and practical tips to prepare your student. So who am I and why should I be the expert talking to you? Well, I'm the proud mother of two neurodivergent college graduates. One will be starting her second year of law school in the fall, and the other will be starting the PhD program and teaching simultaneously in Baltimore City schools. I'm a 30-year veteran of admissions work and an admissions counselor. I have been a first reader at Duke University, where I'm an alumni, and so I also do alumni interviews there, Notre Dame and Columbia. But I started my career eons ago as a school counselor. I have authored hundreds, if not thousands, of IEPs and 504 plans. I'm a lifelong student advocate, a voracious reader, a master gardener, and a world traveler. My late husband was in the Air Force, and so we've lived all over the world. I do have one book recommendation to share as a voracious reader. I thought I would throw one out at you if you haven't read it yet or seen it. It's called Colleges That Change Lives by Lauren Pope. It's really worth the read. And bonus points to anyone who can identify all three of my schools. I said I'm a grateful Boilermaker, Blue Devil, and Blue Jay. All three different places. I'll let you guess on those. And if anyone wants to chime in, there's no prize for getting it right. Okay. So next, I wanted to dig right in and share the kind of differences between what your student will experience in college versus high school, and really what difference it makes as a parent. So in high school, the school identifies and provides services. In college, your student must self-identify and request services. And as every parent who's fought for their kids knows, it's not just request services. Sometimes it's follow up, advocate, follow up, get mad, advocate, and then get the services. There are no more IEPs or 504 team meetings with the family. Your student will meet with disability office. I did have the experience, my eldest daughter, her freshman year, as we were getting everything ready, and I was new to the process as well as a parent. Her school did allow me, and she allowed me to come to that first meeting. We did it on Zoom because she was like a COVID college kid on the end of COVID. So different schools have different rules about that, but I was definitely the visitor. She ran the program, she ran the show, they directed everything to her, and I just was allowed to listen, which is fine. It was the transition. I was a nervous mom, of course, and I just wanted to make sure that she was getting what she needed. So high school, you're the parents, the primary advocates. Student is their own and only advocate in college, okay? In high school, we have a lot of things that help us. IEDA applies. In college, it's really the ADA and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. They do help you in college. Accommodations are guaranteed and actively managed in high school. In colleges, some accommodations are available, but student must request them. High school, you really have a safety net of teachers checking in on you. In college, you do not. The professors rarely reach out. I have had some exceptional professors for my kids, but it's not the rule. Okay, let's see. Know your rights and the laws, and this is just as important for your student to know. So IEDA, K through 12 only. ADA and Section 504, those apply in high school and in college. So it's important to be well-versed and to really articulate what needs you have and what laws mandate that those needs be met from the college's perspective. So what do colleges offer? It varies widely, very widely. Academic accommodations can include extended test time, reduced distraction testing, placement, note-taking assistance, alternative formats, and priority registration. academic coaching, tutoring service, writing centers. What I find for those things is those are usually campus-wide, not disability services specific. There are some schools, and we'll get to those placements later, that do a better job of really making disability services specific. Tutoring, writing centers, strategy workshops. Those schools are unique and few and far between. Counseling and mental health services. This is usually just whatever is available at the college level, not disability services specific again. And then housing differences, assistive technology, speech, text-to-speech software. Now, the accessible housing, I don't want you to think that's only for students with physical disabilities. Obviously, accessible housing is, but a lot of students get priority housing or single rooms without having to pay the single room rate based on disability. Both of my children had private rooms, and it was based on, they identified the priority. They need to sleep. They need to take their medicine at a certain time. They need to go to bed at a certain time. They need to wake up at a certain time. And disruption of that would have been disruption of their stability. And we had to prove that, but we did. And they were able to receive that housing accommodation. Okay. Preparing the document package. Now, this is what you want to start getting ready. Really, if you have a rising senior right now, now is the time. Do not wait until May to start getting this, because there's also questions that you're going to want to start asking when you're making your school list for your student. Where will they best be served, challenged, but supported at the collegiate level? Okay, so start thinking about all this now. Preparing the documents. One thing that you will need is a current psychoeducational evaluation. Now, this differs greatly. This the general guidelines are it usually needs to be within 3 to 5 years old. One of my daughter's schools required it to be no less than 18 months old from the time she started her first day of school. So if it was 18 months old when we were applying, by the time she got there, it was outdated. And schools have different rules about how often they will do the free assessment, public schools, the free assessment for your child. So really pay attention to those deadlines and when you need those in, because ideally you will have one last opportunity to get that done through the public school system. Even if your student's in private school, I'm sure all the parents know this, the public school in your jurisdiction or your catchment area is the one that's responsible for those evaluations. Okay, the diagnosis, though, that is not a part of a psychoeducational. A diagnosis is from a medical professional, psychologist, psychiatrist, physician, and they must be the one that writes out the diagnosis. So the psychoeducational evaluation is a lot of tests. It can talk about processing speed. It can talk about IQ. It can talk about all those things, but it doesn't give a diagnosis. The functional limitations statement is another document that is usually contained in your SOP, your summary of performance, but you don't get that until the very end of your high school career, of your student's high school career. So if the receiving college requires that before the end of the year, if they require that as part of the application process, that will be another document that you need. The history of accommodations, I'm sure every parent has. I have trapper keepers, for lack of a better word, 3-ring binders that are 8 inches thick with all the paperwork. Keep all that. You need to prove that this has been a ongoing situation in your kiddo's life. Well, what if it did just happen senior year? It is more difficult the later you receive a diagnosis in special services at your high school. The later in your career that you receive those, the harder it is to prove that you will need those at the college level. Doesn't mean that's impossible, but just keep that in mind. And then a personal statement. A lot of schools, not all, but a lot of schools do ask the students to write a letter. This isn't your Common App personal statement or anything. This is different. But they ask you to describe how your disability impacts your learning and why requested accommodations are needed. So that shows a couple of things to the college. It shows maturity, a level of insight, and ownership of your diagnosis, right? It's important to own it, say, this is who I am, this is part of who I am, this is what I bring with me, and I know how to manage it. I do X, Y, and Z, and that is enough for me. So that's your time to prove that. Okay. If your student is starting their senior year or earlier, what should we be teaching them so they can really advocate for themselves? Let me tell you, college is a whole nother world. If your student is going, if they've already turned 18 and they're starting college at 18, it is, you as a parent no longer have, it feels like any say so in the process. So one thing that I did with both of my kids, and this is obviously not required, but I had both of my kids give me durable power of attorney as well as medical power of attorney. We discussed it. They understood what it meant, and they willingly did that. It was a legal document that the three of us signed, each 2 and 2. And the reason why we did that is not only so I can talk to the school about needs that they may have, it's also, if an appendix bursts and they ended up going to the hospital, I need the doctor to know they can speak to me, because they won't tell you anything once your person is over 18. So I would strongly suggest families think about that if you haven't already, for your student, your 18-year-old who's leaving. You can even do it. There's mamabearforms.com. I think it's free. You just have to get the form notarized. So that might cost you $5 at your bank or whatever. So think about that. They will not tell you anything. So your student needs to know their full diagnosis. They should know what medications they take, if any, the dosages of those medications, and when they take them. Vital. They should also, this is the time to have conversations with your kid about what those medications interact with if you haven't already. So one of my own kids cannot drink, period. Not once a day, not once a month, not ever. And she understands that. We started having that conversation when she was 13 years old, because she wasn't drinking at 13, but I knew 15 and 16 were on the horizon. And we just started having those natural conversations. And she saw by about 14 that she needed her medication. It allowed her to live a life that she couldn't have lived without it. And for her, that was more important than anything else. So she owned that she was going to be sober. And it was not easy through college, but she did it. And she was really honest about her process. Oh, the website. Yes. I'm sorry. I paused because I was reading the chat. Yes, it's Mama Bear or mamabears.com. I'm not sure if it's plural or singular, but let me know if you can't find that. At the end, I'll also give the Learnfully email address and everything that you can reach out to me if you didn't get that. mamabears.com. Okay. So understanding their rights, understanding the difference between IDEA and ADA. No, they must register with the Department of Special Services or the Disability Services Office each semester. That differs at schools too. One of my children did have to redo it every single semester. The other one just registered every year. So it could be annually, it could be by semester. Communicate proactively. This is huge. Email professors at the start of the semester. Schedule office hours immediately. Don't wait until a struggle arises. So my kids, each at their different schools, and they went to very different schools, got a letter from the Disability Services Office stating what their disability was, and all the accommodations that they qualified for. They were able to ask for a letter that did not list the diagnosis, but still list the accommodations. So there's some HIPAA rules there. Like, every professor doesn't need to know why you're getting the rules. The professor needs to trust the Disability Service Offices did their due diligence. You do have to tell them. But you professors do not have to know. But I would say to my kids, the first day of first semester, each first semester or each new semester, did you turn in your letters? Did you tell every one of your professors? Did you share your letter? Did you share your letter? And there was some reluctance at first, and then they both ended up at schools where they had they had the same professor for multiple classes, and the professors just knew them and trusted them. And they did still submit the letter, but it got easier. The first semester is the hardest. Use campus resources, find out what's available to you and use them. Track deadlines and requests, submit all accommodation letters on time. The offices are not messing around. Disability services, you would think they would be a little less rigid, but I have encountered with my own kids and many, many, many students that I have helped a great deal of rigidity. Deadlines are deadlines, and they do not bend on those. Build their team. So when your student goes to school, kind of like Mr. Rogers says, we're going to look for the helpers. We're going to look for the people who are helpful. Academic advisors, the coordinator in the disability services office. Some professors are going to be so much more accommodating than others. And by accommodating, I don't mean just follow the accommodations. I mean, they're just going to be more helpful, more kind. Seek those professors out. They can even help you with other professors. College is a community. You don't have to go alone. You don't have your mom and dad there every day fighting for you, but you do have people who will support you and help you. So keep that in mind. Okay, there's lots of different layers. Not all disability support programs are equal. Absolutely not. And not all schools in what they can provide you are equal either. That is absolutely true. Everybody has to provide tier one, mandated, federally mandated. There has to be at least one disability services coordinator. Well, if you go to a school, Ohio State or University of Michigan, right, with 60,000 kids, one coordinator is not going to be able to do the work. And I'm not saying that Ohio State and Michigan have only one coordinator, but keep that in mind when you're looking at schools. Ask, how many DSO coordinators are there? How many people staff this office? Are there enough people that when the students need to come in and speak to somebody, there's someone to speak to? And at a tier one school, the student has to be highly independent. Okay, obviously based upon the limited resources. So tier two, those are enhanced programs, dedicated LD ADHD specialists, not limited to just that, but those are, they have more proactive check-ins. There is academic coaching, small group workshops, and peer mentoring. These are often found in kind of mid-tier private schools, some state schools with special programs. We'll get to that later. So just because it's a huge school, don't rule it out. Some of the bigger schools do have very specialized programs and are great places for kids to attend. Comprehensive programs. These are the special schools, the landmarks, Curry College, Beacon, Marist. You guys probably already know those schools. Fee-based structured programs, so they cost you extra money. Weekly coaching, social skills support, executive functioning training. I think we could all use it. And dedicated advising track. Okay, so I want to also say that neurodivergency is not a monolith, and I am very aware of that. All these kids are not the same. There's a difference between ADHD and dyslexia. There's a difference between autism and Tourette syndrome. There's a difference between physical limitations, mental health issues, and all the combinations. We have seen a huge rise in kids who have gone to college as an undergrad freshman year. The statistics are profound at this point. I believe it's upwards of 28% of students who are attending their first year of college have already been hospitalized. Substance abuse, eating disorders, mental health emergency, lots of things. Okay. 1 in 4, 1 in 5 kids. So consider that when you're thinking about the schools that your kids will go to and what services they need. And everyone's different. It's not a monolith. These are just some general guidelines. So there are colleges built specifically for neurodivergent learners. 2 of them, there are more than 2, but Landmark in Vermont and Beacon in Florida are 2. They really focus on learning disabilities, ADHD specifically, and autism. I would say pretty high functioning autism, what we would used to call maybe Asperger's. It's no longer Asperger's, but the high functioning. They do offer, both of those programs offer degree programs. You can earn your associate's or bachelor's degree. They're fully credentialed schools. Some of the others are questions to ask when you're touring. So I can't stress enough the importance of, if possible, taking a in real life tour. You feel a school differently when you're walking on the campus than if you were taking a virtual tour online. Now, if you can't get there, a virtual tour is definitely better than nothing, 100%. But when visiting, or if you need to be communicating via email with the admissions office, ask them what the registration process is. How long does the accommodation review take? Take different lengths of time at very different schools. So you have to start really early. With both of my kids, we paid our deposit by May 1st. We paid it before that. But the May of their senior year, we started working on getting all this to the schools already. Ask about faculty. How are the professors notified of accommodations? At both of my kids' schools, they were responsible. The Disability Services Office did not send out letters. They gave the letters to the student. The student had to walk them or email them to the faculty. They were not notified. Whereas in high school, your kid, when their teachers get assigned, those students are staffed over the summer. The teacher knows that your kid has an IEP or a 504. They're provided that before school starts. That is not true at college. Ask about what kind of support is available, what's free, what's not. Your kid might choose to take advantage of all of it or none of it, but it's good to know what's there. I would also ask about peer support groups and mentoring. What kind of community is there? What mental health services are important? If mental health services are important to your student and your family, I would look at, not those super specialized programs, if you don't need or can't afford those. But within big schools, if you need to take a big school route, go to a school that has a medical school. Okay. So the big state schools do, other little schools do, it's not just the big state schools. But if there's a medical school on that campus, there is at least a level 2 trauma center, probably a level 1. There are counseling services, there's psychiatry, all the things that your student may need would be at a school campus that has a med school. That was a priority for one of my kids. I didn't have them go to a school that did not have a medical school. If I had a type 1 diabetic daughter or child, I don't think I would let them go to Williams College in the middle of 3 hours from a trauma 1 hospital. It's just stuff to think about, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to need it or use it, but gosh, if they need it, it's there and it's not 3 hours away. Okay. So other top programs that are not specialized programs, but have within their school specialized programs. U Arizona, Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT is actually amazing. And I don't know if it's partially because they attract really fabulously quirky kids who like CS and engineering and maybe have issues that they have learned to deal with, but found majors that appeal to how their brains work. But RIT, it's a surprisingly well-structured, well-funded support program. Drexel, another great one. Ohio State. So I know I talked about these big schools, right? Don't think just because it's a huge school that your kid with learning differences will get lost there. If they plug into these programs, they won't get lost. University of Denver and Adelphi are also great programs. There are many, many more. These are specific for LD and learning disability and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Landmark, Curry, Mitchell, Lynn, and Beacon are some of these really specialized programs. But University of Arizona is on this list also. AU, American, University of Denver, Hofstra, and Marist College are also great programs. Clemson has a wonderful life skills program for kids, for people with Down syndrome. An amazing program. And it is so incorporated into the very fabric of life at Clemson that the kids, they join sororities and fraternities, and they're really in the community and they have the extra support they need. It's a great program. So what do you look for when choosing a college? We've talked about a couple of the things. I did kind of interview the disability services people because when my child was in high school, they were still 17. So I still had autonomy to speak for them and to inquire about them and to share stories about them. My kids both have summer birthdays, so they didn't turn 18 until they graduated from high school. That gave me a little bit more flexibility. Think about the social support they'll need. Think about the residential support. We talked about there are housing accommodations. Maybe you need first floor. Maybe you need a single room. Maybe you need differences in the cafeteria, in eating. Are you allowed to take your tray out? Are you allowed to carry food out? Are you allowed to bring in your own utensils if you don't like all the things, right? Whatever those things are, now is the time to start writing down what adaptations or accommodations make your kid the most successful right now. Keep track of those accommodations And how will those happen at college? Think about things that are easy, things that are more difficult, and ask the Disability Services Office, are these possible? Can you help me with these? Or what is my student going to have to take ownership of and really help themselves with? Another thing I tell kids and parents is really think about how far away from home your student, your child can be successful. There are 4,000 plus degree granting colleges and universities in this country. You do not have to go 2,000 miles away from home to find a good school. Some kids are ready to go and they are fine. And some kids think they're ready to go and they get there and they're not. And that is also fine. It is okay to go somewhere and make a different choice and say, this isn't for me. And hopefully you can finish a semester and then you come home and you don't go back. It's okay. That is not failure. That is called living, right? It's okay. But try to have these honest conversations with your student. And I know a lot of families also opt for maybe doing 1 year of community college, get some credits, get some freedom, get some autonomy. Mom and dad step back a little bit, and then you're ready to go. Some kids are ready to fly freshman year, and they do great 500 miles from home. Think about the distance, though. Be realistic about that. How long would it take you to get to them? And are you comfortable with that? And are they comfortable with that? Real things to consider. Okay. Senior year transition checklist. This, as a parent, it's a difficult time with kids who learn normally, kids who learn differently, kids who don't want to be learning at all by the time they're a senior, right? They are getting ready to fly and we are still holding tight. So it's a transition year for students and for parents. In the fall of senior year, so very soon, when your student goes back to school, start gathering all the paperwork, all the things that you might need. Find out if the psychoeducational is up to date. When was the diagnosis done? Different schools have different rules. I would make sure that first slide said 3 to 5 years. I would make sure everything is at least 3 years old or younger, because if it's 3 years old at the start of senior year, at the start of freshman year of college, it'll be at least 4 years old. So keep that in mind. Winter, I would say contact the Disability Services Office really when you're applying. And applying has moved more towards the fall than the winter anymore. Kids are applying early and earlier. Schools have earlier and earlier deadlines. I live in the Southeast United States, and we have many, many, many schools that early action is 15 October. So this is shifted from a winter activity really to a spring or to a fall activity. Ask what documentation is needed when you visit the campus, visit the DSO office, see what the tutoring room looks like, see what the writing lab looks like. In the spring, when you're making your decisions, really think about the place that will be a best fit for you and try to be honest and realistic with yourself and with your student. For a lot of kids, 4-year degree is the first step. For both of my kids, it was. They made other decisions. They both went to college in the state where we live for undergrad, and now they are both far away. My one daughter is more than 1,000 miles away, and my other daughter will be 600 miles away. So it's important to talk to your students about that too. Undergrad might not be the end. It's certainly not the end of your life. Like, you'll go get an apartment, you'll get a job, even if you don't go to school anywhere else. If you don't go far, far from home, it doesn't mean you will never go far, far from home. But it might be a safe first step to stay a little bit closer. Not for all kids, but for some. And then that summer before your freshman year, that is when you will be doing all your paperwork with the Disability Services Office. That's when you'll be having your meetings or your Zoom calls. You'll be make sure all the documentation you need. If you have accommodations that are given to you, that's when those will all be decided. I will tell you that some schools are much, much more liberal with giving out accommodation, and others are very conservative. They'll say, well, let's see how it goes if you need it later. And you say, no, because when I need it later, I will already be behind. I'm not going to get behind. I'm going to have the services that I know I need from the get-go, and you have to fight for them and advocate for yourself. Okay, here are some, if you want to take a screenshot, also when I'll give the website at the end for Learnfully, and you can reach out and we can provide these to you. So these are some really helpful resources: understood.org, thinkcollege.net, Learning Disability Association of America, CHAD, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, College Autism Network. And then that book that I mentioned at the beginning, also Colleges That Can Be Life-Changing. Everything is changing very, very quickly in the world of admissions. And this is just not a plug for myself. This is a plug for anybody. I would really consider using an educational consultant who specializes in students with learning differences. Test optional is going away at a lot of schools. What does that mean for kids who have significant test anxiety or need extended time? You know that their SAT gets flagged, so the receiving universities know if that test was taken with extended time. Some schools treat them differently, some schools do not. It's important to know that in the process. So hiring an IEC whose job it is to stay up to date on all the changes really can reduce the stress and the anxiety on the family. It can also be the person who's nagging your kid to get those essays done when you don't want to spend the last 8 months they're at home nagging at them. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. All right. Your student can absolutely thrive in college, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I will tell you, when my eldest daughter was in 6th grade, I truly didn't know if she would ever live without me. And that was okay, right? Like, that's okay. She is starting her 2nd year of law school. She has made the dean's list and she has a 4.0, and that is not easy in law school. And she graduated undergrad from Duke University, summa cum laude, with a 4.0 GPA. She worked her tail off. She owned her stuff. She understood that her medications were necessary for her stability, and she took them. And she started that in high school because I needed her to be able to prove to me she was ready to go away from me, right? I stopped doling out the medicine and I didn't micromanage, as hard as it is. But I thought, if she's going to fail with the meds, I want her to fail when she's still at home. So think about that senior year, like if you're still doling out things. Because if you're still doling them out at the end of senior year, are they ready to go to school without you? Not all kids need meds, and I know they don't, and many kids are able to handle them just fine. But I'm just saying that it's a process. It's a process for parents. It's a process for students. But your student can thrive. Okay, I have had some pre-submitted questions. If anyone has questions now, please feel free to put them in the box. Some of these I think I've answered, but many of them I haven't. So I'm going to go through them. Try not to speak too quickly, but I'm going to go through them relatively fast. Should my child disclose their disability on the college application or essay? So this is kind of tricky. In college admissions, my joke is our favorite answer is it depends. And I'm not trying to be snide or quip about it, but the answer is truly it depends. So for parents who have been journeying with diagnosed kids for years and years and years, you've probably seen a shift. It used to be an autistic child. Now it's a child with autism, right? We put people-centered language first. So that change, that shift has also made us think, what defines my child? Do I want autism or ADHD or any other number of things, dysgraphia, to define my child? For some kids, the answer is yes, that is the core of the true and authentic who I am. And for other kids, their answer could be, it's a part of who I am. And they will see that. The schools will see I have an IEP or a 504. They will see that. They will get all that information. So I think the answer to, do I use that in an essay, is it core to who you are? Can you not describe your life without it? Then maybe it is. Are you applying to a school that, one of those specialized programs? No harm there. They know who you are. They know you have learning differences already. They're prepared for that. If you're applying to a regular program, a mainstream school without the special programs that just have auxiliary programming, it can be a little bit riskier, honestly. So you have to think about, does it define who you are, or is it just a part of who you are? Because you're also probably a daughter or a son or a soccer player or a goaltender or a chess champion or a cello aficionado, right? All those things are a part of you. Do you bring them all into your application? Maybe in parts you do, but the essay isn't about all those things. So consider that. Does applying to a college specialized disability program happen before or after general admission? Again, depends. It's really important that you look at the schools. For many of the schools, when you go into the Common App portal, if you're using Common App, which is the most common, UCs have a separate system, Texas has a separate, there's Coalition, but Common App is the most common, I guess. There is a box that you can check. Some of them will require different paperwork. Some of them will require an additional essay or additional work by the school counselor at your child's sending school. So look very carefully about that. When is the absolute latest my child can request accommodations for their freshman year? It's going to depend on the school, but I would say they want to start the paperwork in May or June of their rising freshman year. So long before they've moved on campus, after they've paid their deposit to hold their spot at that school, they should be reaching out. Will my child's high school pay for an updated eval before graduation if the college requires it? This we mentioned a little bit earlier in the conversation. Most school systems have requirements on how frequently they will do a new psychoeducational assessment. So the answer is yes, some schools will pay for it if that's the cadence of when your student is due for another one. The diagnosis, that formal diagnosis that needs to come from a medical practitioner, the school will not, they don't pay for that. Diagnoses are much more static, less dynamic, right? So you probably have one of those. Your kid's going to need shots and immunizations and all that anyway. So a doctor's visit will be on your horizon. Can my child use their 504 or IEP accommodations on the SAT or ACT this year? Okay, so we had some issues with this. The ACT is a little bit speedier. The SAT, they tell you should register at least 7 weeks beforehand, before the date of the test, to get those accommodations approved. ACT, it's more like 3 weeks. I would argue that you should still do them at least 2 months in advance. And remember, much of the documentation will have to come from your high school counselor. And they sometimes disappear over summer. So if your student is taking a summer exam and they haven't yet asked their school counselor or put in the paperwork necessary through SAT and ACT, they should do that ASAP, right away. And it might be worth a call to the school admin to say, okay, which counselor is covering the desk this week? Can somebody help us with this if our counselor is out? They usually act as a team in the counseling department. So, but earlier is better. I allow at least 8 weeks. What is a summary of performance, SOP, and how do we use it? So it is a really helpful document if it is reflective of who your child really is at the end of high school. I have written SOPs. I have read hundreds and thousands of SOPs, and I would say 75% of them are accurate portrayals of the student, and 20 or 25% are not. And I would ask it to be rewritten if it's not, because that is one of the documents that you will provide to the College Disability Services Office. It gives context to what your student received all 4 years of high school. It gives context. There's usually a part that the student writes a little bit of a narrative. It gives context to who they are as a person. It's really important to look that over. Okay, I have I'm just going to go back a little bit here. What's the consideration regarding the disclosure in application essays? So I would say it's a couple fold. For schools that have a limited number of resources available, a big state school, right? If you disclose in your essay something about your disability and how you require services, or they will assume that you require services, and they have a limited amount of services, and there's 20 other kids that are qualified, the reality is the student who has more needs will probably not get admitted, regardless of their GPA, regardless of their test scores, regardless of their ability to perform at the collegiate level. They would see that as a red flag. It is not fair. It is not right. It could be argued even it's discriminatory, but resources are what resources are. And if they do not feel like they can serve your child there, it's hard to take, but the honest answer is you probably don't want your student going there if they cannot be supported. So I hope that answers your question, but that's the real reason to think about it. At schools where they can't be supported, disclosing that in an application would be a hindrance. Also, I tell kids in general, you write about scabs, not open wounds. So if you have come to terms with it, if you have come to acceptance of it, and you feel like it's kind of scabbed over and it's just a part of who you are, it's fine to write about it. You have some distance, you have some perspective, you have some insight. If it's still an open wound, metaphorically, do not write about it. You don't have the distance, the perspective, the insight to tell that story yet. And that's true for trauma, for the death of a parent, for the death, like that's true for anything. If you are actively grieving, first year of death of someone, is probably not your story to write. You have too much unresolved in your head and in your heart for that to be your story. Okay. Does my child's current IEP or 504 plan transfer to college? It does not. There are no IEPs in college whatsoever. Now, the 504, those accommodations can be provided to the college and they can be suggested. That does not mean the college will approve them or put that on your collegiate plan. What documentation will the college require? I think we went over that. They need the psychoeducational, they need the diagnosis, they probably need that SOP. They're going to need whatever they ask for is what they need, and you kind of have to provide that all. How does testing accommodation work if my child was recently evaluated by the high school? The testing accommodations at the college level will really, they can write general accommodations, but it's going to depend greatly on your professor. So my daughter had standards that were written and those were abided by, but other things that with a little bit of flexibility, some professors gave her flexibility and gave her a little bit of grace and others did not. So at the collegiate level, it's going to be kind of professor determined. If you mean how does testing like SAT and ACT work, it shouldn't matter when the evaluation was done, just as long as it has been completed in that window of time, 8, 7, 6 weeks before your student tries to take the exam. It gives your counselor enough time to get the documentation to ACT or SAT and things that they need. Okay, how can I help my senior practice self-advocacy before they leave for campus? Oh, this is so hard, especially for the kids who we've maybe done too much for. I was guilty of that myself. But what I really stepped back from was I let my kids handle their communications with the Disability Services Office. I let them, for the most part, handle the questions they asked. I was able to sit in on some of those conversations. I helped them form what kind of questions they wanted to ask. They both left home with journals, with blank books where we wrote down things. And so they remembered to ask the questions, and even talking to their doctors, I'm no longer allowed to talk to their doctors without them or without consent. That form helps. But all those things, you're just teaching them. It's just another level of teaching them how to be an adult, right? My kids didn't know how to write a check or how to address an envelope. We had to go over where to put the stamp. It's just a part of all of that. They advocate for themselves by doing it. Let them start with high school teachers that they're comfortable with, and then segue into the Disability Services Office. Will the college notify me if my student is struggling? They absolutely will not. Not a chance they will. Maybe some of those very specialized schools are different, But in general, if your kiddo goes to a general education college with specialized programs, they will not. Can my student receive modified assignments or course waivers in college? Yes, and it is difficult. Modified assignments are less difficult, but course waivers are more difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. What are the most common accommodations granted at the university level? So I would say the most common accommodations that are given are testing accommodations. So some extended time, removal from the main room into a quiet place where you can take your exam alone. One of my daughters took all their exams in the library. They were proctored, but they took them in the library. Now, a helpful hint is if your student has never been a library kid or hangs out in the library, have them get comfortable with that space before they take their first exam. Okay, the authorization forms, we did a durable power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. And those forms, I had them done through a lawyer, but you don't have to do that. They are found free on a website called Mama Bear. It's either Mama Bear or Mama Bears, plural. I don't know if it's singular or plural. You can Google it.com. And they have the forms free. You just print out the forms, and then you and your child have to sign them in front of a notary to make them legally binding. But you can download the forms for free. mamabears.com, I believe, is the site. Okay. I was just going through accommodations. So let them get comfortable with the library. So it's not a foreign place for them the first time they go to take that exam in there. Course load and scheduling. There are some schools. So to be considered a full-time student at most universities, you have to be taking 12 credit hours. There is some wiggle room for that in most disability services offices. And especially, I advise freshman year, first semester, take the lightest load you can. It is a huge adjustment for every single student to be a first semester freshman on campus. Most kids are living away from home for the first time in their lives. They're managing their own time exclusively for the first time in their lives. They are responsible for eating and drinking, all the things. So for every student, that first semester is historically the worst semester any kid does in college. They spend the next 7 semesters trying to make up the grades that they tanked first semester. It's totally common. So let your student take the least number of credit hours that they're going to take in their collegiate career that freshman year. Freshman first semester, let them get used to it. Okay. I think we've answered all the questions that have popped up. What I really want to leave everyone with is everything is a win if the goal is the experience. My kids both had great experiences in college. They had great experiences in high school. They had hard things happen in high school. They had difficult things happen in college, but they got through them. For more information, or if you want copies of slides or reaching out to me, if your student needs some help and you're looking to hire a college advisor, college counselor, contact at learnfully.com. Our phone number is on there too, 888-459-6450, but contact at learnfully.com is probably your best bet. I'm going to check the Q&A one last time. Oh, you're welcome. It was just a thank you. I am happy to answer any other last questions. If anyone has questions before we log off for the night, I know that was a ton of information. And believe me, I understand that the transition is stressful and it's difficult, but you can do it. Your kids can do it. If you take a step off the path, it's okay. Life is not linear. Their educational journey doesn't have to be linear. It's okay. Kids need to know, my kids know, and they will forever know, home is here. If it doesn't work out when you go far away, then you come home and we'll reset and we'll try again. If it doesn't work when you just go down the street, come home and we'll reset and we'll try again. They can succeed. Enjoy the journey. There will be bumps. There will be. But if you do all the things to set them up for success, hopefully the bumps are small and you can all get through them. It was my pleasure speaking to everyone tonight. I'm really excited to be a part of the Learn Fully team. as a professional, as a school counselor, as an admissions officer, but mostly as a mom who has watched my own kids thrive